Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely a proud privilege for me today to introduce the man, Professor Michael E. Porter. The person or the man does not really need any introduction except saying that he is being regarded as the father of the modern strategic management field. His influence in the world of academia and the world of practice has absolutely been immense. Either we talk about the idea of competitiveness or competitive advantage or social progress or value-based healthcare delivery, his impact has been absolutely stunning. I think the man needs no further introduction. May we actually have Professor Michael Porter, who's joining us on video from Boston right now. So Professor Michael E. Porter, please, over to you. Yeah.
Joining this incredible meeting. I had a chance to listen to a little bit of what has happened over the last little part of your meeting, and I'm very excited to be part of it. I'm very sorry I'm not there, but this is peak season at Harvard Business School, and our campus is full of brilliant young people, and we're embarking on a new year. And so unfortunately I can't be there with you today, but I'm certainly there in spirit, and I want to congratulate you, all of you, for participating in this incredible process, having these discussions, and really raising some of the deepest issues facing business and facing countries and facing societies. This is something that I personally have a great passion for, and I'm so pleased and so proud that Amit and his colleagues and all of you have joined in this effort to try to move the needle, move the bar, raise the standard of what we in business in particular do, but also how we work with other stakeholders like government and NGOs. It's an important moment, as the previous speaker just said. We're sort of at a challenging point in the history of the world economy, and a challenging point for the further development of societies all over the world, including in our country, the United States. And it's a very exciting to see this group of people coming together in India, this group of leaders, to really talk and discuss these issues and try to raise the bar and try to make every one of your organizations better at it. In thinking about what to talk about today, I think the previous session is a very good kind of introduction to what I wanted to cover today, because I think we're starting to see that sort of our narrow view of the various different problems in economy and society and business are starting to merge, and we're starting to see that what we normally thought of as separate topics and separate agendas really are joint agendas, and they come together in powerful ways. And I think this is now becoming increasingly clear in the whole area of development. Of course, we've had a long tradition of thinking about economic development, and economic development is usually measured by GDP per capita, and we've had a long tradition of work to try to think about economic strategy to really raise the standard of economic development in a country. This is an active discussion now all over the world, in every part of the world. Every country's trying to become more competitive so that it can drive economic development and raise the prosperity of its citizens. And increasingly, we're talking about how to do that in an inclusive way, where it benefits many people, not just a few who control most of the wealth in the society. And this issue of inclusive development is talked about every day here in America, because we are now seeing a rising inequality in our society, and we're deeply concerned about what to do about that. But economic development has been kind of a separate topic from what you might call social development. There's all kinds of societal needs and human needs that people have, needs for health, needs for a good environment, needs for nutrition. There's a whole lot of social needs that we have in society, and there's, again, a whole huge field has grown up in social development. And there's countless programs and organizations and initiatives around the world to try to meet all of these important human and community needs. And this has been a separate field. The people who do economic development have really largely been different than the people who do social development. And as this has grown and developed over time, and more people spend more effort thinking about these issues, we also start to see that the role of business is evolving, and the expectations of business in both economic and social development are evolving. So we have a moment where we've had these two kind of traditional fields, economic development and social development, and then we've had business sitting yet off to the side. And now what's happening is we're starting to see that these areas, which have been separate, are starting to emerge and blend and reinforce each other in a variety of different ways. And so what I'd like to do is just spend a moment this morning talking about really the tremendous breakthroughs in thinking now that we're starting to see about how to combine and integrate economic development, social development, and to see the role of business in both. Traditionally, we've seen the role of business as primarily an economic actor, but now we're starting to understand that business is also a profoundly important actor in driving the social agenda. How is this new landscape, how is this new intellectual framework evolving? What are some of the key ideas that are emerging that can guide us, whatever stakeholder we are in how to move our societies forward? I think we all now understand that, and there's really a shared sense that we need to move our societies forward. But I think recognizing more and more that doing that involves not just narrow views at individual problems, but a more holistic understanding of how to raise prosperity and social progress in a more holistic way. Now, what we've started to understand is that economic development and social development are powerfully connected. That if we're going to succeed in economic development, we also have to succeed in social development. If we're going to succeed in social development, we also have to succeed in economic development. We can't think of these things as different anymore. I think many of the mistakes of the last 20 or 30 or 40 years have been because we've thought of these things as different. Because there was a view that there was some kind of a contest between economic progress and social progress. But I think what we're coming to understand more and more is that there's actually no contest at all. There's a need to align and create synergy and create reinforcement between the way we think about these two different things. The successful countries of the next 20 or 30 years, and I hope India is one of those, but time will tell, are going to be the countries that can put these agendas together. They're not going to be narrowly thinking only about economic development. They're not going to be narrowly thinking about just improving the progress of society. They're going to be thinking about these two things together. They're going to be able to synthesize these two fundamental aspects of really the human existence and human progress. Now, let's start with economic development. I think economic development is much more extensively known. There's been much more work done on systematic thinking about economic development. I'm proud to have worked in this field now for more than 20 years and put forward a body of ideas about economic development. And they're focused really on what creates the basis for a prosperous society in which the standard of living of a society can go up. And we see tremendous differences still across countries in performance, in GDP per capita, in how fast GDP per capita is growing. India's been doing well, but India still has a long, long way to go to ultimately get to where it wants to be. In thinking about economic development, we understand that really any true economic development requires competitiveness. We have to create a competitive economy if we're going to create an economy that supports jobs and a rising level of prosperity, particularly false thinking about competitiveness that we have to eliminate from our thinking. We can't think that competitiveness is just creating jobs. Creating jobs is not ultimately competitiveness. Competitiveness allows you to create jobs. Competitiveness is creating a business environment and an efficiency and productivity in the economy that allows good jobs to be created. Efforts to try to artificially create jobs don't mean you're competitive and will not lead to a successful society. We're starting to understand that low wages are not success. You're not competitive because you have low wages. You're uncompetitive because you have low wages. If you have low wages, that means you haven't built a base of skill and efficiency and infrastructure in your business environment to allow wages to be high and rising. So we're learning all over the world now that even the notion of competitiveness, we have to kind of take our thinking about that to another level to recognize it's really true. It's really true character. Now, in driving competitiveness, I've been building a body of work, drawing on the work of many others over the last 20 years or so. What really causes an economy to be competitive? What do we know about that today? Well, we know that the foundation of competitiveness in any economy, in any nation, in any state or region, the foundation is what we call endowments. Every location in the world is endowed with certain things, natural resources, a geographic location in the world, a population, a group of people that have come to live there and work there, land area. All these things are what we might call endowments, growing conditions, weather. There's a whole set of things that we inherit. Any country inherits an endowment. And that endowment is important to the ability of that location to be competitive. If you have a good location nearby the marketplace, and if you can access other markets very efficiently, that endowment improves competitiveness. If you have a very abundant natural resources, that endowment can benefit competitiveness. If you have a large population, that endowment of people living there can actually provide some competitiveness. But what we've learned is that the endowment itself, what you inherit, does not have value in and of itself. Yes, you can have a good geographic location, but the location itself doesn't really make you competitive. It's how you can take advantage of that location. It's whether you've built the infrastructure and the quality of the ports that will allow you to use your location efficiently in order to export and import goods and services. So the endowment is important. It's a foundation. It will create some level of prosperity almost by itself. But to make an endowment turn into a really competitive economy, you have to build on top of it. You have to build assets and skills and infrastructure and knowledge on top of the endowment in order to make the endowment produce true prosperity and rising prosperity for the citizens. So in building true competitiveness, we need at least two other layers of policy and circumstances which will allow us to be truly competitive. The first layer, the next layer, is what we call the macroeconomic competitiveness. This is kind of the foundation, the platform, overall platform in a society, and it consists of things like monetary and fiscal policy. You know, we have to have a sound monetary and fiscal policy. We have to have a budget that is at least in some rough balance. We need to use our financial resources well, not have too much debt. Things like that. So we need stable and sound fiscal and monetary policies, but we also need to put in place the basic political institutions that work effectively and do their job and are fair and respected and relatively efficient in conducting the work that government inevitably must conduct in terms of any society. We also need a base level of human development, a base level of health, and a base level of education we've learned, in order to have an opportunity to go anywhere in terms of economic development. So there's this, what we call this macro competitiveness level that is critical. And we find that in many developing countries, for example, this becomes the first huge challenge. How to get this level, macroeconomic level, this platform to a quality that really enables moving beyond really a very sort of subsistence, low-income economy. But as important as the macroeconomic level is, what we've also learned is that also is not enough. Just like endowments are not enough, just having sound economic policies and just having effective political institutions, that's not enough either. They're kind of necessary, but they're not sufficient. What really creates competitiveness is what we call the microeconomic competitiveness. That's the capability in the actual business, in the economy itself. And that can be seen as in three parts. One, most obviously, the quality of the business environment, the quality of the infrastructure, the quality of the capital markets, the quality of the labor markets, the quality of the regulatory system that actually regulates business and whether it's efficient or inefficient. A business environment, we need to keep raising the quality of the business environment if we're going to be more productive, and it's that productivity that will allow us to actually improve the wage and raise the standard of living. I think that's well known. Every country now is working very, very hard on driving improvements in the business environment, benchmarking, and trying to raise that bar. Another key part of the microeconomic competitiveness is the capabilities of the companies themselves. You can't have a competitive economy unless you have competitive firms that are efficient, that do business well, that are good at mobilizing their people and increasing their skills and becoming more sophisticated and innovative over time. So a critical part of any society's competitiveness is raising the bar in terms of the companies. India is endowed with a lot of terrific companies that are becoming truly world-class, and that's critical to the rising competitiveness and prosperity of your country. That's a key element. Sort of in between the business environment and the individual companies is another really critical area which we find is essential to driving competitiveness, and that's the notion of clusters. Clusters are where you can achieve critical mass of a whole group of companies in the same field that actually give you the power to really drive much more productive and much more innovative activity than if you're talking about a firm sort of operating on its own. Here's a good example of a cluster. This is life sciences here in Massachusetts. This is by far the most innovative, dynamic, concentration of life sciences companies and related services and assets and supporting industries, in the world. This ability in Massachusetts to have put this together, to not just have a couple of pharmaceutical companies, but to have this whole cluster of hospitals, of research organizations, of specialized services, of related products and technologies and software. This ability to put the cluster together is what we're now learning is really the true liftoff factor in economic growth. Where you build a cluster, we find now the data is now coming more and more clear. Where you can put together a cluster, that's where jobs get generated. That's where new companies spout up. They don't spout up in isolated areas. They spout up within these clusters as you can start to put them together. This is where wages get driven up. The wages are much higher where you have a critical mass than if you have just one or two firms working by themselves. We find that patenting and innovative activity is overwhelmingly concentrated where you have the critical mass, because you have the ability to have and the flexibility to really stimulate and motivate innovation, and the institutions to underpin that innovation. And finally, some new research we've done shows that where you can build a cluster, you get more stability over the cycle. during the Great Recession in America, the locations, the regions, and the cities that did best were ones that had strong clusters. Those clusters were more robust when you hit an economic downturn because they had more sophisticated competitive advantages. They had more flexibility to respond to the deep problems we had in coping with a sharp economic downturn. So I think the kind of biggest new message in the global economy about economic development, which is not new because we've been talking about this for many, many years, but I think now we're starting to get the evidence that you can't just focus on macroeconomic stability and institutions. That's foundational, but it's not enough. You can't just build a business environment and think that everything's going to take care of itself naturally. You've also got to think about clusters and building these concentrations and getting companies collaborating at the same time as they're competing. And having government see part of its role as putting the right framework and infrastructure in place to enable this kind of activity. And having universities connect themselves to business through these clusters to really stimulate economic growth. This is something that all of you will recognize because in India, you've got some of these clusters, you've got some of these connections, and that's where the greatest success lies. And I think that what we've learned about economic development is that this is our turbocharger. This is what allows us to ignite much more rapid progress than if we say economic development as a bunch of kind of separate companies and separate industries sort of progressing on their own. And a lot of the new energy of economic development is about creating institutions that enable clusters to work, that stimulate collaboration across the businesses in the cluster and stimulate innovation and so on. Now, much of the energy then of economic development, if you look at it this way, we are understanding much of the energy of economic development isn't at the national level. Most of the energy about economic development is at the regional level. It's at the metropolitan level. It's in cities. It's in states. Again, you in India understand this. But ultimately, the successful countries are the ones that can drive a lot of initiative and a lot of focus in economic development down to the regions, down to the cities. And the national government is not trying to call the shots and run the show. The national government is trying to put together the right environment, the right rules, but then it's actually the regions and the cities are the place of where the energy is really happening and where the economic policy must be created, because every region is going to need its own strategy for building out its economy based on its clusters, its circumstances. And even every city is going to have to think about, where do I stand and how do I look at my business environment and what are the areas where I can be unique and establish world-class capability. That's, I think, the big lessons about economic development over the last 10 or 20 years, and the big success stories, I think, are coming from countries and regions that understand that. Now, as I'm talking, we start to see that business is a pretty interesting actor in economic development, because who creates the clusters? Well, it's companies. Who collaborates to drive innovation? It's companies. So I think more and more we're learning that companies are not only have to think about their own individual circumstances, their company, their border of their company, but companies need to think more broadly about the environment in which they're operating, and in particular their cluster, the related businesses and institutions on which they depend. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. We also have come to understand that as we diversify an economy and as we develop an economy, it doesn't develop randomly. What we find is that growth in economies, it goes from strength to strength. If you've got a strength in one cluster, the evidence shows that your best opportunity to actually keep growing is to grow in a related cluster where you can take advantage of those skills or that infrastructure or that supplier base. This chart sort of gives a schematic diagram of a modern advanced economy and shows the various clusters within the economy These have been developed through complicated modeling that I will not have time to tell you about. For example, if you're in the metal manufacturing area on the lower right of this chart, and you're thinking in your region about where to grow, and you're trying to forecast where the greatest opportunity for success is going to be, your first look should be those other clusters that are related to metal manufacturing. And that we find from the statistical data that we've been working on now for quite some time, that's where the greatest odds of success are. So I think that as we think about economic development, we're learning more and more. We have to think about it strategically. It's not just about doing all the same things and having the same policies as everybody else. It's about knowing where your particular region, your particular city stands, where your areas of strength are, where you've created a critical mass of expertise and companies in a particular field, and then figuring out how to, first of all, build that up, but then build on that to diversify the economy. This is a conception of economic development that is relatively recently understood, and I think it has huge relevance to India as India continues to try to raise the standard of prosperity, because India is a vast country with multiple regions, very different circumstances, and these kind of concepts are going to be critical to taking India forward. And those of you in business, as you try to figure out where the opportunities are going to lie for you and where they're going to lie, I think this kind of thinking is very, very important to making the choices that you have to make. But I think it's also clear that as we think about modern societies, and as important as economic development is, we've got to recognize it's not the end of the story. Just if we achieve good economic development, that doesn't mean necessarily that we're done. In fact, it's been a long time now that people have been talking about the fact that economic performance is not the only measure of success of a society. There's a lot of other measures of success of a society, and we haven't really. We've been measuring very carefully and tracking and working hard to improve the economic measures, but there's a whole lot of other things that are critical as well. And there's this movement that you might call the kind of beyond GDP movement. It's been building now for quite some time. It's interesting that Simon Kuznets, who is the guy who really built the notion of GDP, it was clear to him, who really invented the idea of GDP, that he was very concerned that people only use GDP to measure the success of societies. But of course, that's what happened. And over the last 10 years or so, I think there's been a lot of efforts to kind of think about, well, how could we move beyond GDP? And the Human Development Index and the Human Development Report was really the first effort to do that. Amartya Sen was really the driving intellectual force behind that, phenomenal leader and a colleague of mine at Harvard. And the Human Development Index sort of said, okay, we got to look at GDP, but we also have to look at basically at health and education. And the Human Development Index kind of put those things together. And that was a huge step forward in recognizing that we had to think more than just about the GDP itself. More recently, people have been talking about life satisfaction, happiness. That what really matters is we got to make sure people feel fulfilled and happy in their life. And so there's a lot of efforts to measure that. And use that as a measure of whether a society is really successful as a society, which is maybe related to economic development. That may matter, but it's not the whole story of what creates a fulfilled and happy citizen in a fulfilled and happy society. Now, although these efforts, I think, have done good work and have added a lot to our knowledge in the world about development, we believed, a group of people believed about a few years ago that actually we could take this to another level. And I was approached by a group of leading, actually social entrepreneurs, the Skoll Foundation and others, that were very concerned that we find a rigorous way to actually measure the health of a society. Beyond looking at its economic health, And they were convinced that the existing efforts, although they were good and they were moving us in the right direction, really had not achieved their full potential. So we took on an effort to actually see if we could do this in a different way that would actually add value and build on the knowledge base. And this became called the Social Progress Index. So, all of you probably know, I was the co-chair of the Global Competitiveness Report at the World Economic Forum. I've spent many years trying to measure economic competitiveness and economic performance. But over the last 3 or 4 years, I spent a huge amount of time thinking about social performance. And of course, this has been quite an interesting process because there really have been no comprehensive efforts to measure whether a society is a healthy society. Although there's been some good efforts that looked at pieces of that, there's really been no effort to do that holistically. And we undertook an effort with a very smart group of talented people to try to do that. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that because that starts to put in place the insights about this other part of development. It's not just economic development, it's actually social development. So let's talk about that for a minute. When we created this idea called the Social Progress Index, really to focus exclusively on social and environmental indicators and separate the economic indicators out. A lot of the efforts so far have kind of mixed economic and social together, but ultimately what that does is that confuses what's causing what and what's really going on. And so we decided to try to create a measure of social progress that was just purely about environmental and social indicators, and then we could look at how they related to economic indicators. That was our first principle. Principle number 2 is in measuring social progress, we were focused on outcomes, not on how much money you spend, not how much you care, but how much you're actually achieving in terms of whatever social area it is. Nutrition or women's rights or whatever the issue. We set out to create a very holistic measure of social progress that would apply to all countries, poor countries, rich countries, and countries in between. And we wanted to do this in a way that was sufficiently rich and granular that it would be actionable. That is, you sort of use this to kind of benchmark and see how you were doing, and then ultimately, hopefully, drive change. But to do that, you have to be looking at specific things. You can't be just looking at broad principles because those are really not actionable. So what we did was first we had to define what we mean by social progress, and I'd be fascinated to have a discussion with all of you about this question because this has never been done before. There's a vast literature on social issues and social development in many, many fields, but we haven't yet sort of tried to pull this all together in a framework. And we decided to define, after a lot of work, define social progress this way. It's the capacity of a society to first meet the basic human needs of its citizens, shelter, safety, and so on. Number 2, establish the building blocks which will allow both the citizen and the community to enhance and sustain the quality of their life. And then number 3, to create the conditions so that every individual could reach their full potential, whatever that was, and was able to do that to the extent that they wanted to. This was kind of the definition that we evolved to really start informing this effort. And that then led us to really look comprehensively at all the literature on social development, of which it is vast, and say, okay, well, how would we capture this? And what's the best available metrics and data that we have to really measure the health of a society? And the framework evolved into this framework, which was the one that we published in April of this year, 2014, really in the first version of the Global Social Progress Index, which in 2014 was able to cover 132 countries in the world. This is a high percentage of all the population in the world, and most of the important countries, although there are a few conspicuous countries that had to be left out because there just wasn't data for a variety of reasons. to accurately and fairly assess them. So you can see that for basic human needs, there's a number of basic dimensions of human needs that emerge from the literature and from all the work we've done, and the same on well-being, and the same on opportunity. This effort is evolving, but we've had massive. We had a beta version of this. We had massive comments from all over the world, and we continue to refine. But I think this basic framework has been relatively well accepted. For each of these areas, there are then specific indicators of success in a society that are based on internationally respected data, consistently developed across a wide variety of countries. Some comes from the World Bank, some comes from the UN, some comes from individual NGOs, and we've gone through an extensive process to try to make this a robust effort. You all can't see this, but this is the 132 countries. And this is the ranking that emerged from the individual indicators and the methodology to construct an overall index. And we can construct and cut this data in a variety of ways. I think in yellow on the top right, you will see that of the 132 countries, India on this particular framework turned out to be number 102. And we'll talk a little bit more about India in a moment. What we found was, though, that in general, the more advanced countries were higher, and the poorer developing countries were lower. But there was a lot of variation, and we had some very wealthy countries that weren't doing so well at this, and we had some sort of medium income countries that were doing really well. And so what we were able to do with this for the first time is start to decompose the economic and the social and see how they related together. This chart, again, which I wish all of you had a copy of this to look at it, this chart really illustrates the relationship that we'd never, literally ever in the world history, ever been able to see before. What's the relationship between GDP per capita, measured in the best possible way, and the social health of a society, of the society? Now, what do you see here? You see a chart where as income goes up from zero on the left-hand side, you see a very steep improvement rate in our measure of social health and social progress. A little bit of income goes a long way. And if you look underneath this, you see that little bit of income, when you start to get income from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000, you start accelerating your ability to meet basic human needs and start to influence some of the foundations, of a good quality of life. But we see that although you have very steep progress as you go from income to, say, 0 to 1,000, then the curve starts to bend. And although income goes up, the actual measure of the social progress only goes up much more slowly, and that curve continues to bend. And when you get to be a high-income country, you start to see the tremendous gaps, and you see that actually some high-income countries don't do very well at all, on social progress. And the reason is that when you get to be high income, you start to encounter some real challenges: environmental challenges, challenges of providing affordable housing, challenges of health. You see countries that start having diabetes problems and other nutritional problems that start to drag down actually the objective measure of the progress of their society. We also see outliers here. Saudi Arabia, quite high income, but well below where they should be in terms of their income, in terms of social progress. We see other countries that are that are fighting above their weight, or New Zealand is a good example, a country that's really more of a upper middle income country, but New Zealand actually in this year's ranking, had the highest objective metrics of the health of the society of any country in the world. Now, where's India? Well, India is, of course, a much lower income country, but you see that India is to the right of the line. And when you're to the right of the line, that means that actually your social progress is a little bit less than you would expect, given the level of average income. Now, India is a very complex country. It's very large. There's lots of states. Every state's different. We are now driving this measurement process down to the state level, down to the city level, and over the years we'll get a lot more insight into what's really going on here. But I think that it's interesting then to consider, well, where does India stand? And India is currently underperforming on social progress relative to the level of economic development. But I want to caution that India is very heterogeneous in terms of there's lots of different regions and lots of different groups. And so the idea of an average score for all of India is kind of, problematic. And we understand that. But I think just starting to look at this data, we find is very powerful to start to identify what are those areas in a society, in a country, where that country is doing as well as expected or is maybe doing a little bit less than expected, given other peer countries in its relative income category. And we look at how a country does versus its peers, its economic peers, the countries that have similar incomes, a little bit higher, a little bit lower around it. And that informs a lot of ability to kind of do some benchmarking. So this chart is India's scorecard on social progress. Again, it's a national scorecard. It's an average. That average is confused by a lot of divergence across the country. But as a starting point, you see that things in green are areas where India does very well on the data relative to its economic peers, countries with similar GDP per capita. The things in yellow are where India does as expected with its versus its economic peers. And there's, of course, a lot of those for India. And then the things that are red are areas where India scores actually lower and significantly lower than its economic peers on that indicator. Now, are these data perfect? Of course not. Can we improve the way we do this? Yes, but boy, this is based on the best available statistics, the most respected indicators, the most respected measures. So what we find as we talk to national leaders about this data is telling us something. And it's highlighting areas where, just like we highlight areas of economic improvement necessary and competitive improvement necessary, this data is starting to highlight areas where more work on social indicators and social factors is badly needed in the country. And again, there's room for debate about any one of these data points, but I think this is telling us something. And we've now talked to presidents of multiple countries about this, and I think we're finding that although there's always questions about certain areas and a sense that this isn't really quite fair and this isn't really quite fair, there's also the sense that there's something to learn here, and we need to look at this, and we need to look at our peer countries and see what they're doing and see what we're doing and see if we can figure out how to do this better. Now, I know Indians, over the years I've found Indians are very sensitive to anything where India doesn't look good. But I'm going to tell you that the countries that do best in economic and social development are the countries that can be self-critical and that can take indicators like this and use them to learn and to use them to mobilize action and mobilize change. So I would hope that when I show you this, we're not having people in the room upset and angry, but people in the room are saying, gee, this is very powerful. This is starting to help us understand where we need to work. Now, let me now close the loop and talk about the role of business. What's the role of business in society? Well, obviously we know that the role of business is to create economic prosperity and build a successful business through making a profit. But what we're kind of trying to understand and see over the work I've done over the last 3 or 4 years is that actually business's success is not independent of society. And business products and the needs that businesses meet are not independent of the needs of society. And that's led to the development of this notion of shared value. As we thought about historically about the role of business in society, historically we've thought about it in sort of in an evolving way. You know, traditionally, if business was going to affect society, you know, the traditional view is, well, the way business can affect society is to give money and, you know, make donations. And, you know, this mindset of business giving back is an important mindset, and we support that. And that's going on in India, and you know, you have your 5% rule, and you know, I think that's good. That's a step forward. It's really energizing business to think about, you know, how to influence the community around it. Because if the business doesn't have a good, healthy community around it, ultimately the prospects for business to really grow and thrive are not there. I think we're starting to recognize that. Beyond that, companies have taken on more and more of what you might call corporate social responsibility activity. You know, raising the bar in terms of citizenship, compliance, sustainable behavior, not doing harm, not polluting the environment, mitigating risk, avoiding you know, damaging society or discriminating against people. All of those things are good things, and you know, I'm quite proud in many ways about the business community globally and the Indian business community in terms of your commitment to be good citizens, to be sustainable, to mitigate, you know, harms and impacts that business is having that are not good, and through this improving the trust of business, the trust that citizens have in business, which has been suffering. As business got too narrowly focused on, you know, maximizing shareholder value and didn't really think about the community, and this is true all over the world, that has led to a lack of trust in business and a lack of support for business in many parts of the world, and a political tension between social activists and business. And so corporate social responsibility, we believe, is you know, a very important step. And I think all of you in that room, I hope, you know, are doing this. And and you're figuring out how to do it better every year that goes by. But we believe very, very strongly that philanthropy and corporate social responsibility are not the most important effects of business on society. They're important. We need to do them. But ultimately, the way we in business can affect society the most is through our business, through our products, through the way we produce those products, through the way we source raw materials and other inputs to those products, and to the way we put together and create better and better infrastructure in the communities in which we're doing business. All those things are not social things. They're things that are actually tied to the fundamental success and profitability of the business. And indeed, we are coming to believe that at this moment in history, the greatest opportunities for business are actually not in meeting conventional economic needs. The greatest opportunities for business are in addressing societal needs, including environmental needs, with a business model, which means that we do it in a way that actually makes a profit, that we're efficient enough to deliver important social needs or meet social needs, but do it efficiently and in a high enough value way that we can actually make a profit. Now, I know many of you in this conference have been talking about this in one way or another. But what I want to emphasize here and urge you to do is don't see this as balancing business versus society, balancing the needs of business and balancing the needs of society. Balancing suggests that those needs are different, that we have to do different things to benefit society than we do to benefit the business. So we have to balance those. Instead, we believe that all of you need to think about how you can drive progress in society through your business in a way that allows your business to thrive. Because if we can do it that way, if you can produce a product that, like the Unilever example or others in this room, if you can produce a product that allows people to have better health because you reduce diarrhea from having soap and a marketing campaign for soap that helps people wash their hands, the impact you can have on society is much more important and much more significant than you can have with a corporate social responsibility program or a donation. If we in business really want to move the needle in society, we've got to bring the meeting of social needs into the core of our thinking about strategy and about business. And if we can do it that way, then we can scale. And we can make self-sustaining impact. The problem with philanthropy and the problem with social responsibility is it's not self-sustaining. If you have, every year you have to give more money. And you only have so much money to give. And to do social responsibility, you have to spend more money. And every year, there's only so much you can spend. But when we're talking about shared value, actually, it's self-sustaining. If you can come up with an insight, a product that really moves the needle on something for society, low-income housing, better nutrition, better health, good environmental performance that's valued, that's self-sustaining. It can grow. It can scale. It can serve everybody in society. And ultimately, if you go way back in history, this is what capitalism used to be. What we have in most countries of the world in terms of infrastructure and quality of life and housing and food and all the things that we all depend on every day, that exists because of business. And traditionally, business used to think that way. Business used to think about itself as really critically driving and meeting the needs of its communities and the citizens in those communities. But somewhere along the line, over the last 10 or 20 years, we got so clever and so sophisticated about, strategy and business and finance and shareholder value that somehow the mindset blinded us to the tremendous impact we can have in society through our businesses itself. So ultimately, business has a profound impact on economic development. Business has a very strong stake in improving the cluster in which it operates and raising the bar in terms of the business environment. Business also has a profound impact potentially on social progress, on meeting human needs, on improving the quality of life in communities, on creating opportunity for citizens. In terms of where business should be playing, I think the Social Progress Index, with its green and its red and its yellow boxes, starts to maybe create some insight into where you might want to play. What are those greatest needs in the society that you possibly could meet in your business? I think we're starting to see that we have to close the loop in society. We can't look at things siloed anymore. We can't have government fighting business and business fighting NGOs and NGOs fighting business and everybody pursuing their siloed issue. We have to start to see that ultimately this stuff all fits together. We're on the same team. We have the same fundamental goals. There's a tremendous difference, though, in how we think about the solutions. And I think the more we can start to see the solutions not as redistribution, taking money from this group and giving it to that group, and the more we can see solutions around collaboration and innovation and harnessing each institution for what it can do best, the more we'll make progress. So this meeting is really, to me, an exhilarating example of this kind of thinking starting to come to life in some really important organizations in India, in one of the most important countries of the world. I'm so thankful that you're here. I'm so proud to be associated with this prize, or these prizes, that we're going to hear about in a minute. And I'm hopeful that this process will feed on itself and create ripples of change really throughout the business community in India, but hopefully even broader than that. So with that, let me thank you for your attention, and we have maybe a little bit of time for some questions. I'd be happy to take a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So thanks a lot, Mike, for this exhilarating talk. May I now invite Mr. Singh to actually take the Q&As with you. He's actually going to take the lead here, please.
Good morning, Professor Porter. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Professor Porter?
Right now, unfortunately, very faintly.
Okay. Is that better here? Can you hear me now?
If I listen very carefully, I can hear you now.
Do you want to fix it?
But we're still having technical problems because I'm not hearing you that well.
Has that changed at all? No. No.
Still not.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Is that better? No, we can't hear him now. Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you very much and good morning. Let me say you're better off being in Boston. It's 17 degrees there. It's 7 degrees in this room. So I think you're better off being there. Question one, I'll ask a few questions and then we'll open it up to the House. So the first question is that everyone seems to be chasing competitive advantage, differentiation, building core competencies and the like. So has competitive advantage now become a sort of buzzword, or is it for real?
Well, again, competitive advantage is, again, a very widely used word now, and I'm proud of that because it's a word that I introduced into the dialogue some years ago. But the idea of competitive advantage, I think, is inherently not a buzzword. I mean, basically, the whole concept of competitive advantage says that you have to be able to do something different. You have to offer something unique or something different where you're better in order to successfully compete. And, you know, basically, I think, so what so many companies historically did was they just kind of imitated each other and sort of tried to do the same thing the other guy was doing, but maybe doing it a little better. And I think what the competitive advantage concept does and kind of the strategy thinking does is it says, look, you know, your job is not to do the same thing better than the other companies. Your job is to find your own unique position, your own unique value proposition by deciding to serve particular segments of the market or offer a product with particularly distinctive attributes. And I think that good strategy thinking and a good use of the word competitive advantage is a way of encouraging companies to think about how to make themselves more distinctive and more unique, and to create in that process what I like to call a positive sum competition. You know, so much competition is what you might call zero sum competition. Companies are offering pretty much the same product, pretty much the same service, and they're competing largely on price. And if one company wins, the other company loses. And the customer really doesn't have any choice because everybody's doing pretty much the same thing. You know, positive sum competition is where each company carves out a position where they're going to be the best, you know, and they're going to be unique. And they're not trying to serve everybody. They're not trying to serve every customer. They're trying to serve a set of customers that they've chosen to serve uniquely well by making choices. And that actually expands the pie because every customers get better served because they're not just buying the same thing that everybody else sells. They're buying product from a company that really is speaking to them, and the pie expands and the market can expand. And one company's success doesn't mean another company has to fail. So I think in India, this is a very important concept of how to move from kind of zero-sum competition, imitation, you know, keep the price low, you know, that model, to really a more positive sum competition model based on kind of strategic positioning and unique value and really expanding the market. And I think that's a kind of a transition that in many Indian industries I think would be a good thing.
Thank you. You use the expression social, many, many times in your talk. And my question is, did you as much 10 or 20 years ago How come more now? Have you changed, or has the world changed, or both?
Well, I think certainly, definitely I have changed because I have understood. See, I was trained in economics, and I was trained in business, and you know, when I was trained, you know, economic development was a field of its own. And, you know, business was really about supply chains and marketing and, you know, customer behavior and all the stuff that we all learn, you know, in business school. And then along the way, I started doing work on, you know, economic development first, and then I created a nonprofit that was working on economically distressed communities in our urban centers, and then I started working on the environment, and I wrote some papers on, you know, improving environmental performance. And the more deeply I got into my field, both my economic development field and my business field, the more I started to see that I had an underlying assumption that was not true. And that was assumption that many economists have, and that is that if you're going to do more social good, you have to give up economic benefit. You know, so in the environment is a classic case. The traditional thinking in economics is if you're going to have an environmentally better product, if you're going to have less pollution, that's going to cost you. That's expensive. Reducing pollution raises cost. And what I started to see in my own work, and when I was doing competitive edge of nations, I started to see that some of the companies that were the most environmentally friendly actually had low cost. And that's because they were innovating. That's because they were coming up with new technologies that actually significantly reduced the environmental impact of what they were doing. And actually that was profitable because they were not wasting resources. They were better using raw materials. They were better closed looping their production processes. And I saw the same thing in economically distressed areas, that if you really want to help poor people, you know, improve their incomes, you need to build business, and business needs to, you know, meet their needs, you know, better. And those needs are often underserved, and that's a business opportunity. And so when I started learning, I sort of widened my whole understanding of how to achieve effective economic and business success. And this has become a very core kind of mission for me, which is to help us in business and also help those in government understand that we can't look narrowly at these subjects anymore. We have to start adding, particularly the social in, and so it's a great observation that you made about how often I use that word social that I wouldn't have used before, but I think it's a reflection of our deepening insight and deepening knowledge about many of these subjects, like health and nutrition and the environment and poverty and inclusion and all these things, that we're starting to understand that these are not devoid of relevance and impact and relationship to economics. And as we get more insight into that, I think we're going to be better off. And see, the reason this is so powerful is that you can go to a business and you can say, business, CEO, you be good. You be a good guy. You be moral. You be generous. You can go to a CEO and say, look, behave that way. Those are good values. That's a good morality. And of course, we should. All of us, you know, whatever do we do, should have good values. We should care. We should be good citizens. We should be generous. But ultimately, your ability to change the world based on simply goodwill and being generous is limited, because everybody has limited resources, you know, and you can only spend so much, and you can only give so much, and we need a more powerful model of social change and social progress, and that's really what I think we need to be on the trail of, and the shared value concept that's really directed to business, first and foremost, is really a manifestation of that. But we're working extensively in this area as well, and we're starting also to understand the interface between social development and economic development, And what we're finding is that economic development can only proceed so rapidly unless you build the social underpinnings of that economic development and the community underpinnings of that economic development. And I think people have been sort of saying those kind of things for some time now, but now we're trying to understand the real rigor of how those connections are made and what they mean in terms of behavior. So, that's the journey that I am now on, and I think it's an exciting one, and it builds on everything that I've worked on before. I think continues to be important. You still have to have a strategy. You still have to understand economic, competitiveness. All those things are still true, but I think we're just adding another dimension, and I think that's going to make it more powerful and more actionable. And that's how I would respond to your question.
Thank you. You're quite right in saying that social considerations, social development need not be at the cost of profitability or a trade-off from profitability. My question is, do you ever see valuation methodology, including social development and happiness into the equation? Do you ever imagine that time?
Well, that's a really provocative question, and it's a question that we are pondering. Let me tell you where I am now in thinking about that, and I want to reserve the right to learn and get educated. So first of all, let me talk about happiness. Happiness is a fine thing to look at, and we're happy that we have happiness surveys, and we can learn from them. But I think what we're also understanding is just getting a happiness score doesn't really tell you very much. What we're really trying to understand is what creates the conditions under which people can be happy and fulfilled. And I think that just trying to measure happiness and comparing that doesn't actually tell you what to do. And it also really, in many cases, can be subject to kind of short-term trends. So, people can be happy, but ultimately, are their lives really improving, and are their conditions really improving? So what we've been trying to do is dig below the notion of happiness to the underlying character of a society and the social outcomes you're achieving. And that's been the journey that we're on. Now, we made a very conscious decision to pull apart economic prosperity, GDP, wealth, those kind of things, and social prosperity, social dimensions, community health, individual health, opportunity for citizens. We pull those apart. There have been many efforts in economics to try to build social factors into the GDP indicators. Put value on the clean environment, put value on health and things like that. Try to put that on the balance sheet, and try to then unify conventional economic measures of profitability and social things in the same, financial statement. And I will tell you that at this moment in history, I think that's impossible. I don't think that approach will ever work. People tried it for decades. It never really got anywhere. It was just too subjective, and there's no rigorous way to do this. And, the nice thing about revenue, cost, and profit are they're well-defined, they're objective. You can look at them in every industry. There's no huge assumptions about what the revenue is and what the profit is. There's just a methodology, and you look at the numbers. But when you start trying to value, the environment and put that on your balance sheet, and you try to value things like that, it just becomes so subjective. So I think we're better off not trying to, kind of create these new scorecards where we try to put everything together. I think we're better off actually measuring economic success, because that's ultimately what drives capitalism and the success of a business is the ability to make a profit and use its capital well. But businesses should also be measuring social benefits and impacts that they're creating, and measure those really separately. And then we've got to see how we can better align the economic success and the balance sheet and the income statement with the social impact that the company is making. And I believe that many social issues can be addressed by business really through the conventional capitalist business model. And so I think we shouldn't give ourselves the cop-out of saying, well, we're not making money, but look at how environmentally good we are. I don't think we should give ourselves that cop-out. I think we should say, yeah, we're making money, and that's because we're so environmentally good, that's making us efficient and use resources better and not waste packaging and so forth. So part of this is how to mobilize the most aggressive, widespread innovation in business. And I believe right now that trying to commingle the measurement of these things in one measurement system is not the best way to do that. And in fact, it's not necessarily the right way to do that. So that would be my answer. But it's a very good question, and there's some very good people working on ways of trying to measure social benefits and put them, in the balance sheet and put them as part of GDP. I'm pessimistic about the ability to do that well and rigorously, but I applaud those efforts, and we will learn over time how to do that.
Thank you very much. I think we're running short of time, and thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mike, for this amazing session. We'll just right now move into the prize ceremony. So Mike is here with us for the next 15 minutes. We'll quickly dive into the prize ceremony, please. Rahul, can we just come up stage and do it?
Any other night, this would be called the business end of the night. But considering this is a business event, that is not enough a description. But let's move to the portion where we start honoring achievement in the field of strategy. We begin by awarding companies for the IFC Mint Strategy Awards. These awards celebrate companies that have performed exceptionally well on strategy front in various industry sectors and have missed out on the Porter Prize by a whisker. But that being said, these companies do earn an automatic participation in the next year's Porter Prize process. To do these honors, I would invite Deborah Smith on stage. And for the first set of 2 awards addressing the industries of finance, banking and insurance, and healthcare and pharmaceuticals, may I invite Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee of the IICA. Ladies and gentlemen, the first award of the night, the IFCA Mint Strategy Award in Finance, Banking and Insurance, goes to National Insurance. Please give them a loud round of applause. May I request the leadership of National Insurance to come forward to receive this award. National Insurance, the winner of the IFC Mint Strategy Award this year. Thank you, sir. Thank you. For the IFCA Mint Strategy Award in Healthcare and Pharmaceuticals, we are very pleased to announce the winner this year being Abbott Pharmaceuticals. May I invite the leadership of Abbott to come forward and receive this award. Ladies and gentlemen, a loud round of applause for Abbott Pharmaceuticals. Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for your support. For the next round of 2 awards, may I invite Dr. Ramesh Kapoor of Radisson Hotels on stage, please. These awards are for categories in social assistance and food and beverage. The IFC Mint Strategy Award in social assistance goes to Operation Asha. May I invite the leadership of Operation Asha on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Operation Asha. The IFC Award for Food and Beverage goes to Adani Wilmar. May I invite the leadership team of Adani Wilmar on stage, please. Adani Wilmar, the winner of the IFC Mint Strategy Award for Food and Beverage. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Kapoor. Thank you so much for your participation. For the next set of awards, may I invite Vinay Heber of Harvard Business Publishing on stage. I'm told that he's just walked out. May I invite Anurag Goyal of the Competition Commission to please join us on stage. These set of awards are for utilities, gas, water and power, and for transportation and logistics. For the award on utilities, gas, power and water, the IFC Mint Strategy Award goes to CESC. May I have the team on CESC on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, CESC, please. We now move to our next award in the category of transportation and logistics, and the winner this year of the IFC Mint Strategy Award is DHL. Can we have the team of DHL on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for DHL. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goyal. Thank you so much for your guidance. May I now invite Mr. Anurag Batra from Business World to come on stage, please. We now move to our next set of awards, which are for computers and electronic appliances and construction and real estate. The award in the category of computer and electronic appliances goes to Zycom. May I have the team from Zycom on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Zycom. The award for construction and real estate for this year goes to Shobha Developers. Can we have the team from Shobha Developers on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, the IFC Mint Strategy Award for Construction and Real Estate to Shobha Developers. We now move to our next set of 2 awards, which are in engineering services and information and data. Anurag, please stay on the stage. For engineering services, the award this year goes to Rambol. May we have the team from Rambol on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, the IFC Mint Strategy Award winners in engineering services, Rambol. For the last IFC Mint Strategy Award in Information and Data, may we have Mahindra First Choice Wheels as the winner. The IFC Mint Strategy Award in Information and Data for Mahindra First Choice Wheels. Ladies and gentlemen, now we enter the Porter Prize. Thank you, Anurag. Thank you so much for gracing the occasion. I would invite Amit Kapoor to join Deborah on stage. We begin with the Porter Prize for leveraging unique activities. The award citation reads, effective rendering of activities across the value chain that give them a competitive advantage. It is an understanding that clearly states that good strategies depend on the connection amongst many things and on making interdependent choices and making a tailored value chain. This year, the award has been won by 2 winners. It's a joint award, but let's call them in order of the awardees. The awardees are Mahindra Logistics and Siemens Technology. May we have first the Mahindra Logistics team on the stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for leveraging unique activities to Mahindra Logistics. May we have our second winner for Porter Prize on leveraging unique activities, which is Siemens Technology and Services Private Limited, on the stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for leveraging unique activities to Siemens Technology and Services Private Limited. Thank you so much. We now move to our next award, which is the Porter Prize for Industry Architectural Shift. And this year, the winner for Porter Prize on Industry Architectural Shift is Indigo Airlines. May we have the team from Indigo Airlines on stage, please? Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for Industry Architectural Shift for the year 2014 goes to Indigo Airlines. The next award is supported by the Apollo Gleneagles Group. The Apollo Gleneagles Porter Prize for exploiting trade-offs goes to Tech Mahindra. May we have the Tech Mahindra leadership on the dais, please? Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for exploiting trade-offs goes to Tech Mahindra Limited. We now move to our next category of awards, which is the Porter Prize for creating distinctive product value. And the winner organization this year is Dow Chemical International Private Limited. May we have Dow Chemical International Private Limited on the dais, please? Thank you so much. The ICICI Lombard Porter Prize for Value-Based Healthcare this year is awarded to Fortis Healthcare Private Limited. May we have the management team of Fortis Healthcare on the dais, please? May we have the ICICI Lombard CTO on the dais, please, for the award, for the giving of the award. Ladies and gentlemen, the ICICI Lombard Porter Prize for Value-Based Healthcare awarded to Fortis Healthcare. We come to our next category of awards, the Shared Value Initiative FSD Porter Prize for creating shared value, and the award winner this year is Hindustan Unilever Limited. May we have the leadership team of Hindustan Unilever Limited on the dais, please? Sanjeev, it would be great if you can join the team on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for creating shared value to Hindustan Unilever Limited. Thank you so much. The Porter Prize for Enabling Social Progress this year, we are very privileged to be awarding it to SR Foundation. May we have the leadership team of SR Foundation on the dais, please. May we have Mr. Ruya on the dais as well. And last but not least, the Porter Prize for Excellence in Corporate Integration and Governance for the year 2014 goes to Max India Limited. May we have the leadership team of Max India Limited on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the Porter Prize for Excellence in Corporate Integration and Governance to Max India Limited. May we invite all the Porter Prize winners on stage for a collective group photograph, please. The leaders of the companies of the winners of the Porter Prize for this year for a collective group photograph. May we also invite Mr. Anurag Batra and Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for all the winners of Porter Prize for this year. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. May I now invite Professor Michael Porter for his remarks for the winning enterprises. Deborah?
Okay, Mike, can we actually have a quick set of remarks for the winning enterprises from your side, please?
Thank you, thank you. Well, I've been watching with great interest to see these wonderful leaders come to the stage. I have read about these organizations, and I can tell you that I'm very, very proud to be associated with this effort. Congratulations to all of you. You're terrific. You're teaching us. You're teaching your peers in India, and you're teaching companies around the world. And I look forward to getting to know these companies better, but my overwhelming feeling is what a terrific group of companies, what a terrific group of leaders, and what terrific innovation in management thinking and practice we just are celebrating this evening. And I hope that you will inspire many others through your own work. Congratulations, and we're proud of you.
Thank you, Mike. So thanks a lot for joining us today, Mike. Thanks a lot. It was absolutely a proud privilege. I think heartiest congratulations to all the winning enterprises this year. I think the citations are worth reading, and it's actually an exercise which we do, and it's absolutely a privilege to do this exercise and be associated with. So thanks a lot. In fact, can I actually ask Deborah now? So Mike, thanks a lot for joining us today. Thank you. Deborah, can I have you to give the closing remarks on what is your insight and things?
Thank you. Amit, what a fantastic day. There has been so much energy, so much excitement, so much intellectual depth. And my colleagues and I, who are here for the first time, thought, my goodness, the day was just supercharged with all kinds of evidence of the tremendous growth and opportunity and accomplishments here in India. So let me thank you, Amit, for your leadership, and of course, Wilfred as well. And I want to also thank all the distinguished speakers and participants who've been here today for the first meeting of the National Competitiveness Forum, and of course now being able to participate in this just very inspiring ceremony to give the Mint Awards and the Porter Prizes for the most competitive and shared value enterprises in India. And it was a great honor and privilege for me as well to hear colleague and friend Professor Michael Porter deliver his remarks. He's one of the founders of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness and continues to inspire all of us with his brilliance and always being a leader at the forefront of understanding not just strategy and competitiveness, but how we're going to increase a better world for humankind. I was thinking going through the day that this has been a very exciting week, of course, for these events, but the fact that Prime Minister Modi announced the Make in India initiative, the Mars mission, being in the United States right now, and it really underscores the fact that this is a convergence point for India, and that India is really at an inflection point in its history. When you think of the storied civilization and culture of this great nation, and how now it's building on all of these strengths in order to go to a new era in its history. So I think also one of the things that I came away with today, really understanding and appreciating, both here and of course what's underway with your new leadership, is that this is really a moment also for India to assert and assume its global leadership as a driver of growth, as a regional power, delivering values to its citizens, and also participating in much deeper strategic security relationships as well. As the President and CEO of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, I would just like to say that if we could come back and be together 5 years from now as this relationship deepens, I hope we're going to see a U.S.-India or U.S.-India trade agreement, as well as the continued deepening of our collaboration in national security as well. And finally, both of our organizations, the new Competitiveness Council in India and the U.S. Council, released our clarion calls for competitiveness this week. So we also have a very robust agenda going forward on the collaborative front. But I want to share just a very brief insight I had over the discussions, because our speakers and moderators shared many perspectives on the intersection of strategy, shared value, and success. I would call that S to the third power. We heard that the strategic triad really encompasses a reinforcing system of skills, speed, and scale. However, I'm going to posit that we have to now navigate beyond that triad as we face these really tectonic shifts in the global landscape. And among those things is that we need to move beyond scale to search for new solutions that come from scope. We need to also move beyond the idea of skilled workers to think of lifelong students and workers who are also empowered shareholders. I love the discussion in the last panel about the value of Shakti and empowerment and how we can imbue that cultural wisdom into all aspects of our economic and social life. And finally, of course, when you think of sustainable stewardship and social progress and the hope for the next generation, it's only by coming together, all of us, and joining forces, that we're going to shape a future of prosperity and well-being for our own nations and for the world at large. So Amit, congratulations again. Thank you so much for including the U.S. Council on Competitiveness as one of your strategic partners. And again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thanks a lot for the kind words. So as everything has to come to a close, it was a great day. Thanks a lot for joining us today. 25th September, please mark your calendar for the next National Competitiveness Forum in 2015 and the Porter Prize event. Thanks a lot, Deborah. You were really a great support. Please. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So The drinks are there on the house. Please enjoy the drinks and make merry, and that's how it is.